I would CC on that conversation. Cool. Thank you for coming. We'll be ready probably around like 7:05 or something. Last part. That's good. So I have not been up for 7 hours. That's good, Blake. I was a great intro to the night. And I haven't seen. I got you. You're gonna be I'll sit right in the front row. Hey, talk to me. Where are you at? Black jacket. Or move me somewhere else. Yeah, I woke up to a calendar notification at 1 p.m.
Hey, you
guys. Oops. I haven't done that in a while, but that was awesome. I was up to like 3:30, playing COD. Snow day. I'm all about these snow days. Really? We used to be notorious for not paying. Yeah, we did used to. I was Myers for you. See, fun fact, Ethan Erickson is actually the one who gets to decide. Ethan Erickson? Yep. Loves Ethan. So he is the vice president for administration and finance, which is both the chief financial officer and the chief operating officer. So like he oversees facilities, and for that reason, yeah. That's good. Think about that.
Definitely. So it is by definition intimate.
I was absolutely.
It's not a double date. It is a frat date party. It is not intimate. That's just stop. It is not intimate.
Perception around date parties is being fun formal events when they're more like middle school dances.
Yeah, they are.
Oh, it's
They're like middle school dances.
They're like yeah.
In a bar.
Right. Well, you enjoy those? I like that chair. No, not at all. I like that chair. You look good up there. Yeah. Got you. You know, I think I like it.
What? I just, yeah.
You know, the race. Might be some changes coming up for Bryce next year. Pro Temporary, actually, or yeah, Pro Temporary. That's it. I wish what if it's pro tempore? Definitely not that. Right. I really have the heritage. I thought so, but I really wanted to get like a blank note card and then just like tape it over the program. Speaker. I could have brought my Supreme leader. Star ashes. It's a star. Yeah. Dude, actually, I could get it. Yeah, Zoom said it sucks. It's just so awkward. Your guys' heart-shaped gnocchi. Heart-shaped.
Yeah, Nick made heart-shaped gnocchi by hand. He got a cookie cutter to make them with a cookie cutter, and the one that he ordered was like the size of M&Ms, so he had to make them by hand.
Did they stay heart-shaped after you boiled it?
They did. They were so cute. Yes. No.
The only problem. Horrible.
What?
Can't do it. Can't do it.
Oh,
The texture.
Boiled potato bits? Like
Yeah.
What? They're so good. It's like potato.
Like, have you ever had it from like Nico's?
No, I've had it from Kramer.
Olive Garden has some video.
They do. But now I got that experience.
There's Google.
See, okay. The problem is though, I would never get it at like Nico's or somewhere like that because I've already had a bad experience. I don't want to pay $20
Yeah.
and then be like, this sucks. Jason, 1 for 1. Use some bike.
Yeah.
He will die.
See, I like the
Airbnb on what? I don't know, bro. Then like.
on your stuff. Yeah, no, you know. Russian Jacobs said.
Here, I'll mute mine.
I saw a tweet that said Italy wishes it was garden, and I went, wow. Like in terms of food, but Italy wishes they were all garden. That's like all garden is way better. It's obviously not. You've never been to Olive Garden?
Who wish something in the Olive Garden? The thing they have like a red. And even then, even if I never been anywhere.
In Manhattan.
Or you go there, you want a lot of red. I want
See where I'm from? We have like South was like trucks. Like I played every block I played from like 2 to 4 yesterday, and then until now. I'm gonna go home. What is your favorite later? Play it tomorrow. Oh, now I have to explain that sure.
No. I love that.
I just worried because we had a whole.
That's very good.
I was also just.
Yeah. That's actually pretty good. I feel like if I have option or
That's exactly that. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
I ran.
They make it
That one's. You have
Well, underneath the master, or I just sauced out.
very different. They're like don't make these things.
Where are we going?
I know. Those I live in the so something like
Are we good now?
Just walk.
I now call this meeting of the Kansas State University Student Governing Association Student Senate to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Begin our Student Senate meeting taking place on Thursday, February 16th, 2023 with a land acknowledgement. We recognize that Kansas State University, as the first land-grant institution, stands on the ancestral lands of the Kaw people. Our state of Kansas is home to 4 federally recognized Native nations: the Iowa, Kickapoo, Prairie Band Potawatomi, and Sac and Fox. We must remember that the land serving as the foundation for this institution was and still is stolen land acquired by white settlers. We pledge our commitment to creating decolonized spaces at the university while advocating for the future support and success of Indigenous faculty, staff, and students at K-State. And with that, Speaker Pro Tem Atchison will take it away with first roll call.
What's up, everybody? Anderson. Bannister. Barron.
Here.
Broughton.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Compton.
Here.
Coy.
Here.
DePaz.
Here.
Dole. Griffith.
Here.
Heatherman. Hoffman.
Here.
Hubenig.
Here.
Kamen.
Here.
Kappelman.
Here.
Hershen. Kermer.
Here.
Kenzie. Long.
Here.
Middle. Morello.
Here.
Murphy. Noretti. Navarro. O'Malley.
Here.
Lowry.
Here.
Pelton. Phillips.
Here.
Pondillo. Staya. Carly.
Here.
Salman.
Here.
Schweier. Spindler.
Here.
Drought. Sushanik.
Here.
Claire T. Jimmy. Okay. Thomas.
Here.
Wolf.
Here.
Okay, there are 24 senators present. What?
Kenzie, Murphy.
Kenzie. Hold on. Kenzie, Murphy.
And
Okay. So that brings us to 27 senators present.
Yes. You know I'm asking you, how many do we need to perform?
Do we have?
It's going to be around 25.
Okay.
With proxies, we should be fine. Yeah. Definitely.
Strout.
We have 41 on 34. Two-thirds, right? Oh, so we need one. I think we're
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
All right, and with that, we do have a first open period speaker this evening. Everyone, please give it up for Jeff Barnes from Parking Services. Thank you.
I can probably just talk loud enough for you guys to hear me.
Or everyone on.
Oh, yeah, there you go. I'm gonna just kind of open this up to questions and do a question and answer. So I've been at parking, I'll do an introduction real quick. I've been at parking for 25 years. That's forever, just trust me. Started in 98 as a supervisor of enforcement and maintenance, and became assistant director about 5 years in. There was a new position, so I was the assistant director, and I took over being the director in 2017-ish as interim, and then became full-time in 2018. I think I was interim for 18 months or some outrageous time like that. The thing we're doing right now is LPR, which I'm sure you've heard about, or maybe you've heard about, license plate recognition. We have cameras on top of the vehicles now driving around and looking at your license plates. That's the newest thing we're implementing. It will affect the garage. The gates will go away over the summer. And it's going to change how we do parking in the garage a little bit. Instead of paying when you exit, you're going to pay when you get here. Think of it as a giant meter. So you'll pull in. If you don't have a permit, you'll pull in and you'll either go to a pay station, go on to one of a couple different apps, pay there and go about your business. The apps will remind you, hey, you're about out of time, that type of stuff. So anyway, what questions you guys got for me? Anybody?
Are there any questions? Chair Long.
So we did a survey about 6 months ago, 4 months ago, and of the student buy-in to ask what their primary issues on campus. Most of that was parking was the #1 issue on campus for most students. That mostly stemming from buying a parking pass, not being able to, not being enough spots. Is there any plans in the coming 10 years to expand parking on campus or decrease it?
Decrease is always on the table as far as the university, because parking lots are wonderful places for buildings. We found that out over the years. Weefald Hall was built on top of a 175 stall parking lot, and Leadership Studies is on top of an 83 stall parking lot. So parking lots are wonderful places for buildings to be built. I was thrilled with the location of the business building, despite a bunch of architects not liking it. It went on grass. Wonderful. So I would say the biggest problem with parking is not so much that they can't find a place to park, it's that they can't find a place to park where they want to park. Because since the downward trend of enrollment, the lots north of Weber are empty every day. We have 500 to 800 stalls up there available every single day. So it's the fact that they can't park right outside the engineering complex or right outside the resident hall, right outside whatever, the business building, whichever way. That honestly is the bigger issue, and I can't make stalls closer. I can't create them out of nothing. Parking garages are really expensive. Before the pandemic, I would have guessed a new parking garage would cost 14 grand per stall. So that compared to a flat or surface lot, which we redid the lot just north of Derby Hall, that's 500 stalls there. We did that for $1 million, so about $2,000 a stall. So you kind of get the way. After the pandemic, I'm afraid to know what the prices are. The last thing I heard was that surface lots were going for $6,000 a stall. They're redoing the Edwards parking lot, kind of. They're knocking the building down and planning on putting a parking lot where the building used to be. So they are expanding parking. Hey, I'll give you that. I forget about that one. I'm not really involved in it. So, but they're planning on putting a parking garage there, and they're planning on $6,000 a stall for that parking. So prices have drastically went up in the last few years, and we have not increased permit prices to coincide with that.
Senator Griffith.
Do you have any idea why the cost of parking per stall has gone up so much?
Labor, supplies, everything's going up across the board. I mean, that really is the driving force. It's the cost of labor with manual labor and the supplies, getting the supplies and stuff in. Steel, I mean, obviously asphalt is gas, oil related, petroleum. Concrete's not, but concrete's always cost more. But I think the labor is a driving piece, and then also getting some of the supplies from wherever they come from. So,
yeah, Senator Kamen.
Rather uninformed in this question, so humor me, please.
Yes, please.
Parking at campus, I know is free after 5 p.m. I give or take some, but I'm just curious on other parking garages. I'm sure it's run differently. I'm just curious on why that is also not free, like the majority of other locations.
The parking garage was actually set up to be 24/7. So we were supposed to run that all the time. We've been decreasing staff as they've retired and went on to other jobs and stuff like that. And it's been hard to fill the staff. And with the change to LPR, we're actually, and the change with COVID, we just did not have the staff or the manpower to keep it open all the time. So we switched, and now we leave it open till midnight during the week, and then it's open and free on the weekends. It's the staffing has been the biggest in the cost savings for doing that. With LPR, we're planning on keeping it that way, at least to start out with. So, but that's why. And yeah, it's the resident halls and housing are 24/7, just to be absolutely clear on that. It's the faculty, staff, OWT&Z, faculty, staff, commuting student, and the general lots that are free after 5 and on weekends. So, Senator Egan.
So today I parked in the garage because I didn't want to park in the garage. And I couldn't figure out how it worked because I went up to the little pay thing and the options were language and health. And I tried to Google how does the parking garage work and couldn't find anything. So I'm really hoping I don't get a ticket today.
The gates were up today, so because we were up, yeah, that's why.
Is there any plans to put more information on the site to make sure it's like more friendly for people to figure out what's going on if they don't know what's going on?
We're going to have to change the website anyway with LPR and the changes for that. So yeah, we're going to get some changes to both the website and the information going with that. So, because yeah, it's going to be completely different. Even if you've done it the right way, pulled the ticket, and then paid when you exited, that, you know, it's just the flow of things. But now it's going to be completely opposite. So,
Senator Griffith.
Are you planning on this new information for the new system only to be available online, or are there any ideas for making sure the general student body is aware without having to find an obscure website or download an app?
We are working with someone. We're working with a communications person through at the cashier's office who's been assigned to help us with some of that. So we'll be doing. And the issue is, I'm not sure how to communicate with students as far as what the best way is. We put releases in K-State Today. I'm sure we will get some stuff out through the K-State website and the Twitter, tweet, whatever those things are. Yes, I'm old, I don't do that. But yeah, we're doing some of that as well, but I don't know what all modes of communication we use. But yeah, we'll be sending out more information about that. We're gonna have to, because it's such a drastic reversal. Instead of paying when you exit, pay when you come in. So,
Chair Phillips.
Yeah, so I know you mentioned several times license plate recognition being new this year. What was it that kind of brought about that change, and what's the impact of that been?
So the biggest reason was cost savings. That's the number one thing. We're trying to reduce our costs, and with our staffing levels going down, and this allows us to be a lot more efficient. We don't have to walk through the lot and check every vehicle for a permit. We can just drive through the lot. The cameras take pictures of the things, compare it to the system, and say yes or no. That's basically what it does. Is go, yes, they need a ticket, or no, they don't need a ticket. We call them hits or no hits, and that's the biggest thing. It lets us be more efficient. We can cover the D1 parking lot, which is the big one down north of St. Isidore's, that big parking lot over there. That has about 1,000 stalls in it. We can do that in about 20 minutes in a car, whereas it took us an hour to do it on foot. So that's the type of stuff. We can drive through Jardine a lot quicker and check those license plates, just things like that. Because the campus is pretty spread out. When you start getting up on top of the hill with Ice Hall and Innovation Center, I think is what it's called. So,
Senator Cameron.
With the license plate registration or recognition part, one thing that I know some of my friends and some other students definitely have encountered is car problems where they'll have to get a rental car, have their parents' car or something, and they'll have a new car on campus while their car's getting fixed, but that will come with a different license plate. Whereas a parking pass, you could just switch it to the new car. What's the process going to be for changing like the license plate for temporary use?
you can actually add it. We're allowing, I think, up to 8 vehicles per permit. So only one at a time on campus. So all you do is you go in, you'll add that vehicle to your license plate, or add that vehicle to your account, add it to your permit. And then when it goes away, there's a process to make it get off your account as well. Basically go back in, click on that license plate and edit the plate type to no longer own. But it's easier to walk through it while someone's telling you what to do. But yeah, there, you can add the vehicle and then remove the vehicle. We have that happen all the time. Like you said, rental cars in the shop. It's also wives, you know, husbands, wives swapping cars and driving their kid's car, kid driving, you know, all that stuff happens. So, yeah. Thank you very much.
Senator Huebner.
So I'm a Canadian driver with a Canadian car, and I'm curious as to how ticketing works, because I know the toll roads don't bother ticketing me when I mess up because they have to send it to Canada. So that's what you do in parking services?
So if you have a permit, you'll link that, you'll put in your license plate just like everybody else does. The system, it doesn't necessarily look at states or provinces or any of the types, even vehicle, even permit types. It just looks at the number letter series. So and there's always an officer involved in this. So they have to look at the plate. Well, if the plate's coming up saying Kansas with a series of letters and numbers, and it's saying it needs a permit or it needs a citation, and it's actually a Missouri plate or Colorado or whatever, they can change the state and then compare it. So if it comes up and they're looking at that, right? So they can go in and look, but it doesn't even look at any of the other stuff, plate types or any of that type. It just looks at the actual letter number sequence. And then the officer gets out and writes a ticket as normal.
Can I follow up?
Permission granted.
If you get the citation, how do you make sure someone pays it if it's not linked to someone's account?
We run it through DMV. We run it through the police run it. We also have a system that runs it and goes out and finds out who owns the license plates. If we find a connection, if we start with the permit, then we go to the license plate. We find the connection, then we either send it through collection process, if it's a visitor, or if it's a student, we send it to your student account.
Thank you. I'm not going to park
No,
free, I promise.
Chair Phillips.
Sorry, just an interesting one. So I know you mentioned it'll just come up hit or not hit. Are you able to change like what lot it's looking for? So for example, like if I have an O pass and I'm parked in a W lot, well, can you like change the setting to have my car then come up as a hit?
It actually knows where it is. The GPS, it runs through GPS, and we've got polygons set up on all the different lots. So it knows what lot you're in. It knows what it's looking for. But say, for instance, the engineering lots, both faculty, staff, and students, they set it up so they know which part of A28 they're in. So they'll go in and say, I'm looking for O permits and or, you know, these people should all have O's, and then they change it. These people should all have W's, and that's how it does that. So. Cool.
Senator Kamen.
Apologies for not remembering this 100% well, but I was reading the safety report sent out over a couple weeks ago from the police department here, and just looking at the crime statistics and all that. I think within, I don't know if it was this year or the past couple of years, but there's some statistics about car break-ins or other stuff on campus. In addition to providing parking services, what type of safety is provided?
We actually pay for some police officers. We pay for 2 police officers and a dispatcher through the KSU Police Department. So that is our contribution to the safety thing. We're having cameras installed in the B2 parking lot over spring break. I'm only peripherally involved in that because that's more through the police department type stuff. So, but yeah, we are investing in more cameras. There are cameras in the parking garage, as well as we're here until midnight or so. But yeah, that's kind of our we pay for a couple of police officers to help with security in the lots.
Thank you.
Senator O'Malley.
Do you anticipate being able to catch a lot more students now that you're able to scan the parking lots a lot quicker than you are right now?
I would say we're planning on being able to catch more violators than we have before. I would not sort out students over anyone else that wants to cheat the system. So, because it's across the board. We have people who don't want to pay for parking or forget to pay for parking on the one day they're here, that type of stuff. So it happens everywhere.
I heard questions.
Time for questions has expired. Is there a motion to extend the speaker's time? Senator Griffith.
I move to extend the speaker's time by 5 minutes. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. You have 5 more minutes. Senator Huebner.
This is a bit more complicated, but I know that there's funding cuts happening at Adabas. There's funding cuts happening everywhere. And if for some reason SGA can't help out at a bus, we might lose the K-State park and ride. And potentially if they don't have buses, right? So if we can't park off campus by the football stadium, if because of the travel, what's going to happen to those lack of parking spaces? Is there?
So if I'm still, my plan is still pay for the park and ride. I'm not cutting that funding from my budget. We may reduce the number of shuttles going back and forth from Jardine. We may change the routes, things like that to save some money. But I'm still planning on paying for the park and ride shuttles going back and forth from Jardine down to the Union. That's what you're referring to. We also contribute to the city routes, and that's what I'm trying to cut out of my budget because I just can't afford it anymore. Because we're all self-generated. We don't receive any money from tuition or state taxes or any of that stuff. We generate our own money. 75% of it comes from permit sales, and the last 25% is split almost dead even between citations and meters or the time stalls in the garage. So with the downward trend of enrollment, with faculty staff working from home now after COVID, we're down about $1 million a year. So that's basically my maintenance budget. So I haven't been able to do the maintenance that I want to do.
Senator Griffith.
Do you have any plans to increase penalties for citations in order to make up your budget deficit?
No. If anything, we'd start with permit prices going up, and usually when permit prices go up, citations go up a little bit with them as well. We try to keep the percentages about the same from that perspective. So,
can I follow
up? Permission not granted. Vice Chair Hoffman.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask a question about the permits. Do you in the foreseeable future, how fast do you think those prices are going to go up? Because I assume they will eventually, like with inflation.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I fear that they are going to need to go up drastically, but that is not how we've ever done it. The last time there was a drastic raise was when we built the garage 15. I mean, it was finished 13, 14 years ago, but the prices went up over 3 years, and they kind of doubled, not exactly, but kind of doubled in 3 years. So I fear there's going to be something coming that's going to be similar to that, but I do not know what the speed of that will be or what is going to be tolerable. That's the other piece. So we may have to start looking at doing maintenance in a different way instead of doing as much as we've done in the past, do smaller lots or do smaller sections, things like that, just to start getting the maintenance going. So
granted.
Yeah, so was talking about out of bus. What is your thought about giving students the option to pay for like a special service that lets them have like free out of bus rides throughout the year, so that way it can generate some kind of profit for out of bus?
They are free now. The students and faculty staff are free now.
Yes, just in the future, if you had to cut that funding as like a way to generate something.
That would be up to Adibus, because it's reasonable to pay for a service. It's reasonable to do that. I just don't know what that process would look like. It slows the process down. It changes things. I mean, if it was all done in advance and they could show a punch card or swipe a card or something like that, that wouldn't be too bad as far as the usage and passengers getting on and off. So, yeah, but then you have the technology you have to have.
Right.
So.
Senator Janik.
Hi, have you looked into any other sources of revenue, maybe corporate sponsors or donors to make up that budget deficit, or talking to the Alumni Association or different?
No, there has not. There's never been a donor wanting to pay for parking in that regard.
Yeah.
I'd love to put someone's name on a parking lot somewhere. It's not been something that's been brought up. Usually when parking expands for things like that, it's done with the expansion of a building. Grain Science built those lots when BRI was built. They built that parking, things like that. But as far as us finding other corporate sponsorship, we've worked with Westar. They're the ones who supplied the EV charging station over D1, things like that, but nothing on a grand scale.
Senator Kappelman.
So this is one of the things we talked about in our meeting, but what is the biggest thing that you wish more students knew about the parking?
I would say the biggest misinformation is the funding. I mean, we get that all the time. I pay this much money for tuition and stuff. Right, we don't get any of that. You know, it's that conversation that comes up. But I'd really like to make sure we got there and get their involvement, get students involved with parking council and showing up for things like that. We have a parking citations appeals board, and having students make sure the students are involved with that and understand what they're doing. And it's that student involvement. I actually like talking to students. They don't necessarily talk to me, but it's actually wonderful when they actually come in and ask questions. I don't know how many. We had a English professor on campus that would assign a parking paper every spring semester, I think. And so we would have 20, 30 students walking in, asking us questions and stuff. And I'll be honest, most of them walk in with a hit on their mind. They're going, I'm going to get these guys. We're going to figure this out. And then you actually walk them through everything. They're walking around going, I don't know what I'm writing about. Yeah, I enjoy talking to students. It can be fun. I want more of their involvement and more of their help with deciding how we're going to get through the next few years and all that type of stuff.
Time for questions is expired. Is there a motion to extend the speaker's time? Senator Kappelman.
I motion to extend the speaker's time by 5.
Is there a second? Seeing none, we will go ahead and move on. Thank you so much, Jeff, for coming. Are there any further first open period speakers? Okay, seeing none, we will move into the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Chair Thomas.
I move to approve the minutes.
Okay.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Are there any objections? Seeing none, minutes stand approved. For announcements this week, nominations for SGA awards are now open. Nominate your fellow SGA members for the Senator of the Year, Susan M. Scott, Outstanding Female Leader, and Bernard Franklin, Outstanding Advocate Awards. The nominations will close on Friday, March 3rd at 11:59 p.m. Proxies, if you're going to be absent from a Student Senate meeting, please fill out the link, even if you aren't sure if your absence will be excused. Or if you'll be physically absent from a Student Senate, but would still like to attend via Zoom, please fill out the Student Senator Zoom request form, and Speaker Porter will review the request based on the Student Senate attendance policy. Hopefully everyone didn't have trouble accessing that this week. Additionally, if you want to give props to someone in Student Senate, fill out this Senate shout out form, and Speaker Pro Tem Atchison this week will read them at the end of our meeting. Our SGA member of the week is Tommy Compton. Tommy has worked very hard as a College of Engineering caucus leader by setting up a meeting with his caucus members in the Dean's office. Thank you for your tireless support of students, Tommy. And then on the upcoming events calendar, we have Student Allocations Committee meeting Sunday at 7 p.m. And on Monday, we have Student Services Fee at 5:30, Strategic Oversight at 7 p.m., DEI at 7 p.m., and Tuition Enhancements Committee at 7:30. On Tuesday, we'll have Ops at 5, and we'll have Senate Exec at 7, as well as the KCU-SGA General Election. I think that's supposed to be a meeting about that. On Wednesday, we have that again for the general election. And then on Thursday, we have the engine meeting at 5:30 and Student Senate at 7 p.m. Quote of the week this week is, our stories may be singular, but our destination is shared. And that is from Barack Obama. Okay, is there a motion, moving on to commendations now, is there a motion to consider Resolution 59? Chair Long.
I move to consider Resolution 59. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. If the author would like to come forward.
Hey guys, what a crowd. I love seeing all the empty spots. Let's get this Senate cooking. Okay, so this is resolution 22-2359, commendation to Asian American Student Union. Authors, me. Whereas Asian American Student Union, alongside Society of Asian Scientists and Engineers, hosted their Lunar New Year celebration on February 11th, 2023. Whereas this event showcased Kansas State University students, the experience and significance of the Lunar New Year in Asian cultures. Whereas this event was widely attended by around 300 to 400 participants. Whereas through this immersive event, students were able to see beauty and diversity via performances of traditional dances that include a Vietnamese fan dance, a lion dance, a Bollywood dance, and a Japanese dance. Whereas this event included a traditional wishing tree, traditional red envelopes, and paper lanterns to help further cultural learning, and whereas the audience was also brought into a union filled with fun activities and food to help truly bring the Lunar New Year to KSU. Be it resolved that the Kansas State University Student Governing Association applauds Asian American Student Union and Society of Asian Scientists and Engineers on their commitment to KSU students and their enthusiasm in making our university more welcoming via the showcase of experiences through their culture and traditions. Section 2. Upon passage by the Student Senate and signature of the Student Body President, a copy of this resolution shall be sent to Asian American Student Union President Grace, I'm just gonna say H, so sorry. Society of Asian Scientists and Engineers President Jordan Wu, Interim Associate Vice President of Diversity and Multicultural Affairs, Mildred Chavez, Director of, sorry, there's a lot of names, I'm getting lost. Intercultural Learning and Academic Success, Deborah Bolton, Director of Diversity and Multicultural Life, Kevin Santos Flores, Assistant Director of Student Engagement for Diversity and Multicultural Student Affairs, Graciela Bermune, Program Coordinator for Diversity and Multicultural Affairs, Brandon Clark, Program Administrator for Diversity and Multicultural Affairs, Adam Carr, Vice President for Student Life, and Dean of Students, Dr. Thomas Lane, and then University President, Dr. Richard H. Linton.
Okay, are there any questions or corrections for the author? Chair Long? Or, yes, Joseph.
Yeah, could I just add Society of Asian Scientists and Engineers to the title? I only wrote Asian American Student Union just because they are the ones that requested funding. But then I fixed that because I looked more into it.
That has been noted. Are there any further questions or corrections? Yes, Senator Spindler.
Is there a reason UPC wasn't, the Union Program Council was not put in the first whereas clause? Because they were also up that event. Is there a way to maybe add them back in?
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
As you can see, okay, are there any further questions or corrections? Chair Long?
Well, this is more for you, actually. This term, we've set things to at least, what, 150 people probably? Are they actually getting there, or what's the status?
Yes, they have been getting. The emails are less personalized now, but they're still making their way.
Okay.
Any further questions or corrections, or is there a motion? Chair Long?
I move to approve resolution 59.
Unanimously?
Unanimously.
It has been moved and seconded to approve resolution 59 unanimously. Are there any objections? Resolution will stand approved. Okay, moving on from commendations into committee reports. Are there any committee chairs that would like to give a report tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on to directors' reports. Are there any directors that would like to give a report tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move into final action. Is there a motion to consider Bill 88? Bill 88. Senator Kamen.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to consider Bill 88. If the author could please come forward.
Remaining time.
Any changes been made?
Yes. So we changed on line 28, we said EOF funds based on the true demonstrated needs of requesting entities, as opposed to like entities that are receiving money, just that are requesting money because these funds are not guaranteed. We changed a couple of semicolons, but other than that, no. Made the one word change that Blake asked for.
You have first rights to debate.
Yeah, so this one is very similar to the other one. It is just giving us a little bit more flexibility when it comes to funding EOF and SCTE applicants. This one specifically EOF. This one gives us the ability to fund 3-month GA positions because we had an entity that requested 3-month GA positions, but we were only allowed to fund at 9 or 12 months. And so we weren't allowed to fund their summer positions, which sucked, and we wish that we would have. And then we increased the amount of scholarship money to $1,000 each as opposed to $700 because that hadn't been updated since 2008. And then we struck the line about wages having to be calculated at federal minimum wage because of the wages resolution that we passed previously.
Okay, for your debate, seeing how that was debate in the positive, we are now seeking debate in the negative. There's no debate in the negative. We are seeking further speeches in the positive. And is there any more debate at all on Bill 88? Seeing none, we'll go, Chair Phillips.
I move to bulk roll call bills 88 and 89.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to bulk roll call bills 88 and 89. Are there any objections? Okay, Pro Tem Atchison will move into a roll call vote of bills 88.
Have me consider.
Oh, is it a debatable motion?
No, you didn't. Yeah,
okay. Chair Thomas, you have first rights to debate on bills 89.
Hey guys, 89. Pretty much the same thing. It's just SCTE. It strikes that, and we don't do anything with GA positions because we don't fund GA positions with SCTE funding because it is more project-based and it is not something that is sustained funding. So there's nothing in there about GAs. With a bulk roll call, they're gonna call your name and you can say yes to both, no to both, yes to the first, or yes to the second. Just for those who don't know how that works.
Thank you, Chair Thomas. Is there any debate in the negative on bills 88 and 89? Is there any further debate in the positive? Seeing none, we'll move into a bulk roll call of bills 88 and 89.
Anderson. Bannister.
Yes to both.
Barron.
Yes to both.
Bellamy.
Yes to both.
By proxy.
By proxy.
Blood.
Yes to both by proxy.
Broughton.
Yes to both.
Brown.
Yes to both.
Compton.
Yes to both.
Coy.
Yes to both.
Cuesta.
Yes to both by proxy.
Dennis.
Yes to both by proxy.
DePaz.
Yes to both.
Dole. Griffith.
Yes to both.
Heatherman. Hoffman.
Yes to both.
Hubenig.
Yes to both.
Kamen.
Yes to both.
Kappelman.
Yes to both.
Pershing. Kidd.
Yes to both by proxy.
Kermer.
Yes to both.
Kenzie.
Yes to both.
Long.
Yes to both.
Middle. Morello.
Yes to both.
Murphy. Naretti. Navarro.
Yes to both.
O'Malley.
Yes to both.
Lowry,
Yes to both.
Felton, Phillips,
Yes to both.
Pilchard,
Yes to both by proxy.
Bondillo,
Yes to both.
Rogers,
Yes to both by proxy.
Syatt Carly,
Yes to both.
Syatt Nick,
Yes to both by proxy.
Solomon,
Yes to both.
Schweier, Spindler,
Yes to both.
Stout,
Yes to both by proxy.
Stroud,
Yes to both.
Sushanik,
Yes to both.
Talbert,
Yes to both by proxy.
Thimgen,
Yes to both.
Thomas,
Yes to both.
Vogelmore, Wolf.
Yes to both.
Okay. Bills 38 or 88 and 89 pass on a vote of 39 to 0. Okay, moving on to resolution 58. Is there a motion to consider it?
Doesn't need a motion to consider.
It doesn't. Okay. If the author could please come forward then.
It's in final action already.
All right. So I am not the author of this bill, but I am the vice chair of the Strategic Oversight Committee. And this is something that Brooke has worked on for a really long time. I think by passing this bill, it will make things a lot easier for students to be able to have a more collective scholarship networks that students that, you know, have hard times being able to find those scholarships will have those all in one place. So by voting yes, I think you will be able to make scholarships and the university as a whole a lot easier for more students.
Thanks for that debate in the positive. We are now seeking speeches in the negative for resolution 58. Are there any more speeches in the positive on resolution 58? And is there any debate at all on resolution 58? Seeing none, we will move into a hand vote on resolution 58. If you're on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. If you would like to vote yes on resolution 58, please raise your hand now. And if you would like to vote no on resolution 58, please raise your hand now as well. Can you remove the raise hand? There's a lower hand function somewhere. It's in the. Okay, if you're on Zoom and you would like to vote no, please raise your hand now. Or do a thumbs down. All right. Resolution 58 will pass via hand vote. Okay, moving on to introduction of legislation for the week. Is there a motion to consider Bill 91? Senator Huebning.
I motion to consider Bill 91.
It's been moved and seconded. If the author would like to come forward.
Hello. So this is Bill 22-2391, amendment to the KSU SJA bylaws regarding the DEI committee. Authors me, whereas the Kansas State University Governing Association should continue to update documents to reflect a better outlook on essential items needed for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee to function. Whereas the amendment is valued due to recent, I cannot read that word right now, consolidation of the Diversity Program Committee into the DEI Committee, the change that occurred last term. And whereas this legislation will set up the DEI Committee for better success and funding and outreach for the future. Being enacted that. And then, let's see. So the few things I did change is on line 42, at least 2, just because a lot of people applied for at large. And then So sorry, it's highlighted. Most of the changes are like on the committee shall. So for example, F, G, and I host at least one funding workshop to help publicize, promote, and increase the utilization of the diversity programming line item. G, create a report on the diversity programming fund. This report shall include learning opportunities, challenges, in-depth reports of funds requested, and all applications submitted. And then I, write recommendations to student groups to apply their efforts in making Kansas State University more inclusive. And then section 2, this legislation shall take effect upon passage by the Student Senate and signature of the student body president.
Thanks, Joseph. Are there any questions or corrections? Senator Kamen.
It's a question of if it is a correction. On line 42, where you had at least 2 at-large students of the libertarian conservation law, could the T and 2 be lowercase? It's no longer the start of the sentence. Does that go in after the change?
You got it.
Got it. Okay. I was like,
sorry, I was like working on like 4 different pieces of legislation, and then I was like, ah.
That change has been noted. Chair Phillips.
Yeah, Joseph, I noticed there weren't anywhere as clauses about like the changes specifically. When this goes to committee, would you all consider potentially like adding in a couple just to explain, like for example, the F, G, and I, just like why the committee feels those are.
I get what you mean.
Yeah, like the best thing for DEI. Thank you.
Chair Long.
Line 71, A, section, paragraph 3, non-college is crossed out.
Thank you for letting me know that. Yeah.
Is that supposed to be crossed out? Is that staying?
Exactly, crossed out. Do you want to know my intention behind it?
Are you replacing it with something, or is it going to say?
It's just crossed out.
Yeah. University-wide specific organization.
Yeah, so just cross out non-college.
What is a university-wide specific organization?
So I think that we as a committee shouldn't just be focusing on student groups, but colleges. So like, for example, each college has different diversity committees that we can reach out to. Honestly, that's not DEI's job essentially, but like if no one does it, someone has to, right? So for that to be in there kind of sends a message that we cannot reach out to like specific colleges who ask for people that may be interested in DEI, have issues with like DEI problems on campus, want to get an SGA type deal, so.
Senator Kamen.
I'm sorry, this is nitpicky. On line 71, the same one, whereas specific organizations are acting with that now. University-wide and non-college were acting as adjectives, which is why I believe there's the comma, but now that non-college is there, it's no longer a double adjective, so could the comma be removed as well? Okay, thank you.
I think it might also be a good idea.
That was
the university-wide organizations.
Yes.
Joseph, throughout the rest of the statutes, they're called university or campus-wide ones, so that would be compliant with other things.
Come through Senate Ops, look at you guys. Thank you, so we don't have to fix it later.
Okay, are there any further questions or corrections for the author? Seeing none, you might want to hang out up here. Is there a motion to consider Bill 92? Chair Long.
I move to consider Bill 92. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Logan.
Wow, I'm back. Okay. This is amendments to the KSU SGA, statutes regarding diversity programming allocation guidelines. Authors me, whereas the Kansas State University Student Governing Association should continue to update documents to reflect a better understanding of how the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee functions, whereas the amendment is valued due to the recent consolidation of the Diversity Program Committee into the DEI Committee, change that occurred last term, and whereas this legislation clears up and outlines the process in which the Diversity Programming Fund shall be used. Being enacted that, let's look at this, so sorry. So I think someone blurted out to me, but I think line 55 is the first change. Just kind of talks about jurisdiction and power. Requests for diversity programming events. Expenses shall be reviewed by the DEI committee, the chair of which shall be responsible for ensuring appropriate allocated amounts are written and produced into an allocation sheet. Sheet will then be signed by the chair and advisor attending the meeting, validating the committee's decision based on rules and merit. And then Sorry, my thing has highlights on it. Oh, okay, so food, only thing I added was and drinks. Just because it's not like specifically stated, but like if you're having food, like for example, Popeye's chicken biscuit is going to be dry. You're going to need something to drink. So it's just like thought of like you need drinks to be with it. So I added and drinks, and I said funding for the purchase of drinks shall be permitted in instances where food is present. Yeah, I think that's it.
Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Seeing none, you may take your seat, Joseph. Is there a motion to consider Bill 93? Senator Huebning.
Motion to consider Bill 93.
It has been moved and seconded.
All right, good evening, everyone. I hope you're having a great snow day out there. First up, we have Bill 222393, decrease of the recreational complex maintenance reserve student services fee agreement. Author Blake Phillips sponsors the Student Services Fee Committee. Whereas the Student Services Fee Committee reviewed the request of recreational complex maintenance reserve during the scheduled 3-year review cycle. Whereas the recreational maintenance reserve account is used towards covering the expense of major maintenance projects undertaken by the complex, including the repair and or replacement of fixed building property, a major part or component of the structure, structural equipment that are not part of the normal maintenance and ordinary repairs of the facility. Whereas the recreational complex maintenance reserve account currently holds $910,384, which may only be utilized with the approval of the Student Services Fee Committee. Whereas the recreational complex maintenance reserve account has maintained an amount close to $1 million over the past several years to ensure that there are readily available funds in the case of emergency damage to the complex. Whereas the Student Services Fee Committee is committed to ensuring the financial well-being of the student services fee, whereas in order to ensure the financial well-being of the student services fee, decreases are necessary during this review cycle. Whereas recreational services presented on the impacts of various decreases to their budget, whereas given the needed level of decrease to the recreational services overall budgets, recreational services requested to minimize the decrease to its operating budget. Whereas in extraordinary circumstances, emergency reserve funds may be allocated from the general surplus account. Whereas the Student Services Fee Committee deemed that eliminating the recreational complex maintenance reserve account for the next 3 fiscal years will not impact the ability of recreational services to perform needed maintenance. And whereas the Student Services Fee Committee voted 9-0 to recommend the following student services agreement to Student Senate. Be it enacted that Section 1, the Kansas State University Student Governing Association approves the following student services fee budget agreement, and this agreement shall be included and or replace the appropriate number in the KSU SGA statute. So what this does, this specifies that there will be no funding for the maintenance reserve account for recreational services for the next 3 fiscal years. However, the reason that we're still passing this contract is number one, the account still exists, so there are still rules and regulations that it needs to abide by. But number two, in 3 fiscal years, we do want this to be re-reviewed so that the next committee can potentially add money back to this if there are still maintenance concerns and as that money is spent. And so you can see all the contract language there. Section 2, Bill 222393 becomes effective upon passage or upon execution of this agreement by the Student Services Fee Committee Chair, the Speaker of the Student Senate, the Student Body President, the Director of Recreational Services, the Vice President for Administration and Finance, and the Vice President for Student Life.
Thanks, Blake. Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Chair Long.
Like we already on line 17 for the 910.
We can put the zeros on there. The only reason I didn't is because it's an approximation. So there's probably a couple cents on there. But it
the zeros in the be inactive part. So you have the zeros in the be inactive part.
Gotcha. Yeah. Either way works for me because it makes it clear that that's like right around what it's at. Because that number, like there are approved expenses, so that number may potentially change by the time we pass it. So that's why I left it off, but either way works.
Yeah, are there any further questions or corrections for the author? Seeing none, Blake, you can hang out around up here. Is there a motion to consider Bill 94? Senator Huebning.
Motion to consider Bill 94.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
All right, this is Bill 22-2394, decrease of the recreational services repair and replacement student services fee agreement. Author, me, sponsors, Student Services Fee Committee. Whereas the Student Services Fee Committee reviewed the request of recreational services repair and replacement during the scheduled 3-year review cycle. Whereas recreational services repair and replacement fund is currently used for building equipment repairs and replacements, including fitness equipment, building equipment, and building furnishings at the Chester E. Peters there needs to be an S on line 14 after Peters. Recreational complex that are not fixed or a major part or component of a structure or structural equipment. Whereas the student services fee is committed to ensuring the financial well-being of the student services fee. Whereas in order to ensure the financial well-being of the student services fee, decreases are necessary during this review cycle. Whereas recreational services presented on the impacts of various decreases to their budget. Whereas given the needed level of decreases to recreational services overall budget, recreational services requested to minimize the decrease to its operating budget. Whereas part of recreational services operating budget is already reserved for repair and replacement expenses. Whereas the Student Services Fee Committee deemed that the elimination of this fund for the next 3 fiscal years would not significantly impact the ability of recreational services to perform repair and replacements. And whereas the Student Services Fee Committee voted 9-0 to recommend the following Student Services Fee Agreement to Student Senate. So same thing as last time, this decreases the amount of funding for the repair and replacement account to $0 for the next 3 fiscal years. Same intention for this to be re-reviewed again in 3 years and also to keep some of those guidelines in place. And this one, unlike the last one, the maintenance account was more for your big time expenses. This is repairing treadmills and like basically equipment repairs and stuff like that. Nothing structural or huge. And so section 2, Bill 22-2394 becomes effective upon passage or upon execution of this agreement by the Student Services Fee Committee Chair, Speaker of the Student Senate, the Student Body President, the Director of Recreational Services, not or Recreational Services, the Vice President for Administration and Finance, and the Vice President for Student Life.
Thanks, Blake. Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Seeing none. Is there a motion to consider Bill 95? Vice Chair Hoffman.
I move to consider Bill 95.
It's been moved and seconded.
All righty, last one for me, folks. Bill 22-2395, decrease of the Recreational Services Student Services Fee Agreement. Author, me, sponsor, Student Services Fee Committee. Whereas the Student Services Fee Committee reviewed the request of recreational services during the scheduled 3-year review cycle. Whereas Recreational Services Department manages the Chester E. Peters Recreational Complex, Outdoor Rental Center, and associated outdoor recreation areas, including playfields, tennis, basketball, and sand volleyball. Whereas Recreational Services manages the program areas of intramurals, sports clubs, fitness and wellness, challenge course, aquatics, climbing wall, and aquatics should be struck. And the free time usage of the Chester E. Peters Recreational Complex. Whereas the Student Services Fee Committee is committed to ensuring the financial well-being of the student services fee. Whereas in order to ensure the financial well-being of the student services fee, decreases are necessary during this review cycle. Whereas recreational services presented on the impacts of various decreases to their budget. Whereas given the needed level of decrease to the recreational services overall budget, recreational services requested to minimize the decrease to its operating budget. Whereas this proposed decrease represents a 3.3% reduction to recreational services operating budget. And whereas the Student Services Fee Committee voted 9-0 to recommend the following Student Services Fee Agreement to Student Senate. Be it enacted that, section 1. And so this budget will be funded at $1,304,080 for the next 3 fiscal years. And there should be .00 added to the end of each of those. And yeah, section 2, Bill 22-2395 becomes effective upon passage or upon execution of this agreement by the Student Services Fee Committee Chair, Speaker of the Student Senate, Student Body President, the Director of Recreational Services, the Vice President for Administration and Finance, and the Vice President for Student Life.
Thanks, Blake. Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Seeing none, you may take your seat. All right. Is there a motion to consider Resolution 60? Chair Thomas.
I move to consider Resolution 60.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to consider Resolution 60. If the author can please come forward.
Resolution 22-2360, recommendation to Kansas State University regarding a better system of bike lane demarcation. Authors Jolene Griffiths, sponsors Tommy Compton. Whereas the Kansas State University Student Governing Association should promote the health and well-being of all K-State students. Whereas biking is an activity that corresponds to greater health and longevity while also allowing for quicker navigation of campus. Whereas the Kansas State University Bike and Scooter Guide and Regulations Section 2, Subsection B, Part 1 states, riding a bicycle on university walkways Monday through Friday from 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. is prohibited except where indicated otherwise on the bike map. Whereas the provided map requires students to bike on streets that lack proper bike lanes, which is difficult to memorize, and reading a map on a bicycle is a needlessly difficult task. Whereas the in-ground bike lane markers are few, far between, and difficult to see while moving quickly on a bicycle or scooter, whereas penalties for failing to ride on the bike lanes can levy fines up to $20 per violation, and repeat violations can lead to the impounding of the student in violation's bicycle. And finally, whereas awareness of bike lanes will lead to safer campus for pedestrians and bikers alike. Be it resolved that Section 1, the Kansas State University Student Governing Association, KSU SGA, recommends that KSU begin the process of redesigning and remarking the on-campus bike lanes to a better account for biker safety, navigability, and ethical design. Section 2, upon passage by the Student Senate and signature of the student body president, a copy of this resolution shall be sent to KSU SGA Attorney General Kathleen Cowell, incoming KSU SGA Attorney General Hattie Polston, Executive Planning Director and University Architect Ben Perry, Associate Vice President for Facilities Casey Lawyer, Morrison Family Associated Vice President for Student Wellbeing Kathleen Hatch, Vice President for Student Life and Dean of Students Dr. Thomas Lane, Student Access Center Director John Maysberg Tomlinson, all current members of the Parking Citations Appeal Board, and University President Dr. Roger H. Linton.
Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Senator Kamen.
Where are they?
My point exactly. My best friend who's on the same floor as me rides his bike constantly, and he has said himself that every day he lives in fear of being caught by one of these supposed people who check for people riding on the bike lanes.
Oh.
There's like down where the chemistry building and the dang it, what is it? The leadership school. There's a couple of those in-ground bike lanes, and then there's actually some on the walkway right by the engineering building. You know those little squares in the ground that have like a glass pane that has a bicycle symbol on it? That's what those are.
Oh.
Did you not know that?
I didn't know. They're just weird. They're for decoration.
No, that's what the bike lanes are supposed to be. The only place anywhere that you can find the bike map is in a PDF of the regulations, and that's it. And if you don't ride on the lanes, you're technically breaking campus laws.
Thank you.
Yes, Senator Spindler.
Were those lanes instituted when that used to be a street through campus, and when they turned it, now it's no longer a street through campus? Is that why like you can't really find those bike lanes anymore?
That would probably be my guess. However, I have not looked into the history of the streets on campus.
Derek, I see you shaking your head back there. Do you want to shed some light into this?
When we did change that from a street to the pedestrian thing, we wanted to kind of designate fast moving things, slower pedestrians. So we did that with 17th Street, which is in front of engineering and power plant, as well as the mid-campus drive in front of Willard and King and Leadership Stones. There used to be a pedestrian bike lane too over on by Boston Plaza and that area. Once again, to try to keep fast moving things in their way. As you recognize, our students pretty much don't know about it and just pretty much go. And then you mix that, the bike lanes came in way before we got the lane scooters. Maybe even more dangerous than bikes.
Thank you, Derek. Are there any further questions or corrections? Chair Phillips?
Yeah, what was it that inspired you to write this?
The fact that the previously mentioned friend of mine said that he hated the bike lane so much. And so he asked me, hey, you're in SGA. Can you say, hey, these are pretty bad. These need to be better. And so I did.
Okay.
Follow
up. Granted.
And so have you had any conversations at all with anyone in like facilities or just anyone about this in general?
I was not able to find contact information for people that I would think had enough experience with the actual bike lanes to form an opinion. But I was also kind of hoping that some of you guys would know those people, and then we'd be able to basically start a conversation, hence why it's a resolution.
Yeah, Derek?
I would say the director of campus planning would be a good place to start, as that office is sort of the keeper of how things move around campus, and then parking and campus space would be brought in, I'm sure, as well.
Okay, do you think we could add them to the resolution?
Okay, Senator O'Malley.
Just out of curiosity, do you know if anyone gets fined? Have you heard of anyone being got?
I have not heard anyone, but the fact that it's still in the actual guide says that it's still possible. I don't know if anyone has been, but if nobody has been, then there's no reason for the regulation.
Yeah, well, I see the Attorney General and the DAG on here. Do we write and control that bike and scooter guy, or why are they on here?
The idea was that I'm also sending it to the Parking Citation Appeals Board, because that's who you would go to if you got a citation, and then the Attorney General kind of acts as the oversight for the whole Justice Department. So I thought might as well send it to them. There's no harm in not.
Senator Huebning.
I'm looking at the map right now, and it says a bunch of our roads are bicycle routes on the street, but I know that there's only the ones marked on Dayton North Manhattan. But I used to take Claflin all the time, and there isn't a sign that says share with bikes, even for sidewalks. Can you add something like that too? Because Claflin going up towards college is terrifying on a bike.
Sure.
Like, there's better signage about, hey, these are the places we share with bikes.
Yeah, that would make sense that if you're doing a full overhaul of the bike lanes, you would also say, hey, drivers on this road, you're going to be sharing it with bikes, so try not to run into people.
Okay. Are there any further questions or corrections for the author? Seeing none, you may take your seat. Is there a motion to consider Resolution 61? Senator Huebning.
Motion to consider Resolution 61.
It's been moved and seconded. If the author could come forward.
All right, this is Resolution 22-2361, Need for Parking Education. Authors Brady Kappelman. Whereas the Kansas State University Student Governing Association is obligated to address common problems faced by students, whereas a fall 2022 survey by KSU SGA identified parking as a single greatest area of student discontentment, whereas many students, especially incoming freshmen, lack information on parking at KSU, whereas the information deficient students to adopt false and or misleading knowledge about KSU parking services, whereas such knowledge has contributed to an environment of misunderstood penalties, frustration, and resentment, and whereas widely advertised educational content on parking would improve the ability of students to reach campus easily while following the necessary guidelines. Be it resolved that Section 1, Kansas State University parking services should develop video and or other visual education content on the following topics. 1, how to order a permit. 2, how to appeal a ticket. 3, where to park with common student passes. 4, applicability of regulation during weekends / evening hours. And 5, other topics as deemed necessary. Section 2, KSU parking services should, to the extent possible, advertise this content through new student orientation materials, KSU online platforms, and the KSU Student Governing Association. Section 3, upon passage by the Student Senate and signature of the student body president, a copy of this resolution shall be sent to Director of KSU Parking Services, Jeff Barnes, and KSU President, Dr. Richard H. Flynn.
Thanks, Brady. Are there any questions or corrections for the speaker? Speaker Porter.
Brady, can you share a little bit about the new technology that Parking Services is
using in the parking garage? I know you and Jeff talked about that.
Yeah, so he was actually here earlier tonight telling us a little bit about that. But it's really exciting what they're doing, the LPR, which is going to be able to cut costs because as he did mention earlier, the parking services is completely funded by themselves. So being able to cut costs that way will help us to, you know, be able to, sorry, I completely lost my train of thought.
You're good.
Cutting costs, yeah, good stuff.
Thanks, Brady.
Senator Griffith.
In section 2, you mentioned that the parking service should advertise through the Student Governing Association. What do you mean by that?
So one of the things that we talked about was possibly having some like social media presence and kind of advertising them. Because that's, again, as we all know, that's a big way that students receive information. So looking at the possibility of furthering some of their messages through our SGA platform.
Are there any further? Oh,
I know that you said, it says that you got this information through the survey that was put onto the oversight committee, correct?
Yeah.
Is this resolution something that is connected to oversight, or is this just like
Yes, this is connected to oversight committee. I think we're going to vote to have it sponsored in our next meeting. Is that right?
Senator Suchanek.
You mentioned that there would be a video for new student orientation. Would that be a requirement? Would it be in our Canvas modules, or how would that be?
We were thinking more it would be on the parking services website, because one of the big problems I noticed when I was looking through the website, and that Jeff also expressed an issue with, was that people, they may not know how to do some of those things. So having it included in the website will make it easier for students to actually be able to do those different processes easier.
Are there any further questions for the speaker? Yes, Coordinator Lynn.
If it is something that's happening through oversight, is there a possibility to add more language in the resolution about it being a part of the committee? Because like just looking at it, I can't tell that this is something that came out of oversight, and like I helped create it. So I think that just like clearing that up would make it.
Okay, yeah, we can definitely do that. Yeah.
Senator Huebning.
Super nitpicky question on my correction, and grammar's hard. In line 9 for fall 2022, should fall be capitalized?
Is it as active in the proper noun in the context of semester?
Yes. Are there any further questions or corrections for the speaker? Seeing none, you may take your seat, Brady. Now we're entertaining a motion to consider Resolution 62. Chair Long.
I move to consider Resolution 62.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. If the author can please come forward.
Alrighty. Resolution 62. Whereas Kansas State University is invested in the academic success of its students, whereas the Kansas State University Student Governing Association has a responsibility to advocate for academic transparency and practices that help students achieve greater course success, whereas KSU SGA's Universal Academic Support Plan identified that KSU should provide a clearly defined picture of its courses from enrollment to completion, whereas today, students are not provided course syllabi on a consistent and predictable timeline, whereas syllabi often include information that students must act on quickly, such as textbooks to purchase, whereas in some cases, students are placed at a disadvantage by not having syllabi reasonably in advance of course start dates, and whereas students require the knowledge of what is needed in their courses to succeed. Be it resolved that Section 1, Kansas State University should adopt a policy to govern the timely distribution of syllabi. Section 2, the Kansas State University Student Governing Association believes that a 1-week prior deadline relative to the course start date would achieve the best results for students. And Section 3, upon passage by the Student Senate and signature of the Student Body President, a copy of this resolution shall be sent to University Provost and Executive Vice President, Dr. Charles Tabor.
Thanks, Nick. Are there any questions or corrections for the speaker? Chair Pondillo?
Yeah, so I like this idea. I was wondering if you had thought about maybe keeping syllabi, like past syllabi, on here while making this, or no?
I am confused as to your question. Can you ask it a different way?
So sorry. So have you thought about having professors keep syllabi from like past courses to kind of give someone like a brief description? So like then it leads into like less of a dropout rate from like classes, right? Makes sense.
So connecting students who are not enrolled in a course with an old version of a syllabi is a different discussion. This is about students who will be enrolled and will take a class, like it would show up on their Canvas page, if that's a reasonable way to describe it. These students, in the opinion of John and myself, should have access to that syllabi 1 week before they start the class.
Senator Huebnig.
First, that can we add to line 26, like on top of students require the knowledge from what is needed in their course to succeed, but also for them to make informed decisions.
Yeah, that seems very reasonable.
That way we can wait lists better.
Senator Griffith.
My question is that at the very least, as a freshman, I've had no problems of obtaining my class's course syllabi before. So is this like a problem that becomes more apparent as you go into the higher level classes?
That's a really good question. I feel like this is, it can be all over the place for a given student. It really is on a case-by-case basis, and it can vary widely student to student. I'm very happy to hear that you have not had problems like this so far, but that's what really drove us for the request in section 1, which is that we should have a policy to govern this practice. It's not just that we want it earlier, it's that we want to be able to predict when we have that information, so it's consistent.
Can I have a follow-up?
Brandon.
So is the reason for writing this coming from a personal experience that you've had of where you haven't been getting syllabi for your classes, or have you been receiving complaints from other senators or other students at large, or is this just an issue you've been hearing on the grapevine? The complaints that form the basis of this legislation are not unique to my student experience. It's something that a lot of members on our committee are familiar with, and probably a lot of people in this room.
Senator Huebnig.
Do we have a website that will, like, if you search a class, will tell you that you're syllabi?
No, we do not.
So my undergrad has this, and I'd love to show it to you. But what happens is you search the class thing, and once it gets approved by the dean, it gets posted there. So you can get one that's temporary, and then the dean. That was really helpful in COVID, because then they had to set up new ones for my institution because they had to change around assessment weights and everything. So then there's a new dean. I think if we had something like that, that would be way more informative, and then we could go back to search years of previous syllabi. So you can make more informed decisions about, hey, is this prop doing one way? Is that not like the prop?
I think that topic is something we should talk about later. But thank you for providing that.
Senator Kamen.
Yeah, sorry, I was still formulating thoughts. I've had experiences in the past where a professor would give a syllabus, get their syllabus on paper, and then like students would lose it, and by students I totally don't mean me. And then when I go back to look later, it wasn't online or anything, which is possible to add anything about ensuring that it's accessible throughout the entire year. Anything like that. Is that possible?
That seems very logical to me. Sure. I don't see a universe in which we do adopt a policy that governs like early release for syllabi that somehow allows paper versions to still exist. Like those two scenarios seem competitive.
I just know that people in the physics department love their paper.
All right.
Senator Bannister.
Yeah, so someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I just wanted to point out that there are other schools in the Big 12 who have policies similar to this that are like a lot more advanced and you get them sooner. So I don't really think that this is pushing anything. I just want to make people aware that that's a thing.
Will is correct. May I? Will is correct.
Thank you, honey.
When Juan and I were at the Big 12 conference in Lawrence in the fall, Baylor shared with us information about their open syllabi policy. It's a conversation that I have had with members of Faculty Senate, specifically the Faculty Senate president. If you want more information about those conversations, come to me after.
So in case you're on Zoom and you didn't hear Speaker Porter's response, this was something that we heard about at the Big 12 conference earlier this school year. So if you have more questions, feel free to reach out to Speaker Porter about that. Senator Huebning.
So right now, something Senator Cannon was saying, I have courses that don't use Canvas. So if you're wanting to implement something about having it technologically available outside of paper, we have to also think about having Canvas.
I would imagine that the policy we ask for can take into account circumstances like that.
Are there any further questions or corrections for the speaker? Seeing none, you may take your seat. With that, we have exhausted our legislative agenda for tonight. Is there, and we're moving into second open period. Is there a second open period for tonight's Senate? Seeing none, we'll move into Senate shoutouts.
All right, Senate shoutouts. Speaker Pineda Gomez, fire emoji. To the world's most underwhelming snow day ever, but we can't complain now, can we? I hope Evan is okay from almost physically walking into a parked car yesterday. We had the Juan speaker tonight. This is for Jeremy, nerd.
In a kind way.
Shout out to Popeye's Chicken for being a cultural learning experience. Shout out to the Kansas State University flag for being a very good flag. Hoping Evan has recovered from being hit by a parked car. And lastly, to me, Bryce Atchison for doing such a good job as acting as president. With claps around it, very cool. Thank you to whoever wrote that.
Okay. Reference of legislation for tonight. Bills 91 and 92 are going to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Bills 93 through 95 are going to the Student Services Fee Committee. And resolution 60 through 62 will be going to the Strategic Oversight Committee. And with that, yes, Senator Griffith.
I move to send Bill 222391 to the Strategic Oversight Committee instead of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee.
Is there a second? Chair Long.
Question of privilege, why?
Because it's directly related to the inner workings of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. And so it doesn't really make sense to send it to that committee when there would be essentially a bias around what they would be having to do instead of sending it to a different committee.
Point of information.
Yep.
That is typically what we do in reference of legislation. If something relates directly to structure of a committee, we'll send it to that committee. If it's a large structural change to the organization, typically that would go to the Senate Executive Committee. But in a case like this, where it is changes to the DEI committee, we typically consider the DEI committee experts on what they do and allow them to refer that legislation back to Senate with the best recommendation about changes to their committees.
Okay, I rescind my motion.
Okay. So reference of legislation was as it just said. We'll move into second roll call now.
Okay, roll call. There we go. All right. Anderson? Bannister,
Present.
Barron,
Here.
Broughton,
Here.
Brown,
Here.
Compton,
Here.
Coy,
Here.
DePaz, Dole, Griffith,
Here.
Heatherman, Hoffman,
Here.
Huberting,
Here.
Heyman, Kappelman,
Here.
Pershin, Kermer, Enzi, who's here?
Here.
Long,
Here.
Madoff, Morello,
Here.
Murphy, Moretti,
Here.
Navarro, O'Malley,
Here.
Lowry,
Here.
Pelton, Phillips,
Here.
Pondillo,
Here.
Styak Carly,
Here.
Solomon,
Here.
Schweier, Spindler,
Here.
Stroud,
Here.
Sushanik,
Here.
Tolbert, Timgen, Thomas,
Here.
Wolf.
Here.
All right.
All righty, thanks, everyone. Is there a motion to adjourn? Senator Hubick.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to adjourn and meet again, same time, same place, Thursday. I will call us adjourned at 8:28 p.m.
What?
Thank you for hanging on with me, folks. I promise your speaker porter will be back next week.
Slightly.